Hey, welcome back. This is our 6th video in our series on AutoCAD for architecture for beginners. Now, this is our basic home plan we're working on. And right now, we're going to do a foundation plan. Now, before I do that, I need to look at layers for just a minute. So I can either click on the layer tool right up here, it's highlighted in the middle, or I can type in LA at my command prompt and just push enter. Literally, I can type in layer as well. Or mine's actually docked over here. So if you look at my dock over here, I've got a lot of layers. In fact, I'm going to turn the brick back on so you can see it right there. And I just turn on and off right here. Lets me do that. Now, here's how these work. This is the on and off switch. It just makes it visible or not. Okay. This freezes it, which means, honestly, if you hover over the freeze button for a minute, it usually tells you what's going on. If I go up here, maybe it'll tell me what's going on right there. There's the freeze command. Basically, it works similar to your on-off, but it makes it so it really can't be touched at all. Okay. Now, if you want something to be there, but you don't want to mess with it, you can lock it. Now, you can have stuff locked that is visible, locked and invisible, or locked and frozen. Any of the above work, but locked means it's not editable while that layer is locked. Okay, you can't edit anything on that layer. Now, next button here is the print layer. That tells it whether or not that layer will print when you send this picture to the printer. So whatever I draw here, if I draw it on one of these layers, like say this one right here, that's this area, no plot, see how that got the little red symbol right there on my printer? That means no matter what, none of these layers that are 241 print mine. These are my construction layers. And the construction layers show up really nice on my black background, and that it is a pink color, but it's a nice, easy to see pink color, at least for me. So I see that pink, I know that's a construction layer. It's not going to plot. I don't have to really stress it out. I use it a lot for things like boundaries on hatches. I use it for boundaries of rooms when I'm trying to figure out floor coverings and things. Because when you do a polyline around a room, that polyline, if you list it, it will give you the area of the space it encloses. It will also give you its perimeter. Well, that makes it really easy to do calcs for things like paint and for floor coverings and determine how much you really need. So as I'm looking at these things, that's what I'm doing there. Now, color right here, I don't get too concerned about. I pick colors that work for me. Now, there's a base palette I normally use, and it's a holdover from a former engineering job I used to work for. My white layer, which is color number 7. In fact, if I click on this, you'll be able to see the color palette. Oh, popped up over here. So my color palette's right here. My color number 7 was always the darkest. That is always an object line. Colors number 6 and 5 are the next heaviest, and I usually use those for things like phantom lines and for my secondary object pieces like countertops and things, okay? My 4 and 3, which is cyan and green, okay? Those are things like my hidden lines, my dashed lines, okay? And then colors numbers 2 and 1 are my thin lines that are solid. These are things like my dimension lines and my extension lines, okay? Other than that, these colors up here don't really matter. I pick them based on what I like, okay? And then I control the thickness of the line weights right here for plotting. I don't do a lot with that all the time. These are like, that's a 0.5 millimeter line for my white lines typically. Sometimes they do get changed up. This is a 0.3 millimeter line for, that's a doorway right there. So I work my way through those, okay? Now that said, let's do this. I'm gonna pull this layer down right here. I'm gonna go down here. Now my floors I've prefixed. All of my first floor stuff gets a 1 in front of it. All of my second floors will get a 2 in front of it. If it says 3D, that means it's literally for something I had to render in 3D. Okay, I don't do much of that. My basement foundation, I'll get a B in front of it because it's easy to work with. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to get a B walls layer. And now, because it's a separate layer, B walls right here, I can go to polyline right here, and I can literally come right here on the edge of my brick. Now, why am I taking my B walls layer to the edge of the brick? Because when I do a foundation, if I have a brick veneer, I have to have a brick ledge around my house. If I do not, there is nowhere to set that brick on, and you cannot set a brick in the air and hope it stays there. So, unless you've somehow beat the laws of physics. So I'm just going to close that. And because of the way I did it, I can now go like this. I'm literally going to go up here to off, and I'm going to turn off that line, and that, and this, and the doors. And all I'm left with is my B walls layer. So I use the off tool right here to turn off all of those first floor items. Now, if I go offset, well, A standard basement wall is 8 inches thick in our area. So we put our forms in at 8 inches. So I set that inside the house because it's a polyline, it all goes in at once, 8 inches in. Well, here's the funny part. Offset again, I'm going to keep the 8 inches. Well, if I go 8 inches in again and 8 inches out from the outside one, these two lines right here would actually mark my footing. So I'm going to pull this layer down. I'm going to go up here to B, and I can put it under hidden, but I can also put it under footings, which I've already got a footings layer. So those lines, that last line I offset inward and that furthest line I offset outward, are my footings of my building. Now, in this case, I can look at it because this is 30 feet wide. I do not want to span 30 feet. Now, this is 17 right here. So what I'm going to do in my home, I'm already on my walls layer. I would normally frame in a wall that goes across here like this. And I would offset that wall 5.5 inches because that's how thick it'd be. I'd frame it out of 2x6 material. And that wall represents a bearing wall. Now, because it's a bearing wall in my basement, I have to have a footing. Now, notice I've got a greater distance to the right side here than I do to the left. That's because, honestly, I want to have few weird corners in my basement. And this is a normal spot to put one. And 17 feet of span for a normal floor joist is no big deal, okay? And this is only 13 feet of span, so it's an asymmetrical span. But in reality, I'm going to order 30-foot joists, and I'm going to strand them all the way across. This is just to make it so they don't get saggy out here in the middle, okay? So I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to make current layer, this guy right here, and I'm going to go like this, line from right here, and I'm going to take it straight up until he's perpendicular right there, okay? Now, if it doesn't snap to perpendicular for you, bring your cursor down here and find this guy right here. This is your OSNAP settings. You can right-click on it, go to settings, and set it to perpendicular, or you can just pick perpendicular from the list. Okay, so I'm just going to go back in here to my piece, and I'm going to go click right there. So there's that. Now, here's the bad part. This footing offset still has to be 24 inches wide, typically, to the bearing pressures we need. That makes it an asymmetrical footing. So here's my question. Do I move this over, or is it okay with an asymmetrical footing? I've never had, at least on a house this size, an engineer tell me that's a problem. And I usually run them past a certified engineer when I do floor plans and make sure that engineer checks all my calcs and all my placements, all my bearings, my footings. And all of the ones around here have run it back and say, with our soils and the compactions we require, that's fine. Check it in your area. Okay. Now, that's the foundation plan. To do the concrete, I would figure out where my basement windows go. We make current this layer, the walls layer. And where my windows go, I'd start putting in a window, and I'd trim it just like I did upstairs. If I wanted a window right there, I'd find the center of it, and then I'd offset that, say 2 feet, because a 404 window is quite common in our basements around here. So I'd do that, and then I'd just simply trim that out and put a window in there. So I go down to my walls, the windows, and I go, actually, let's use a rectangle tool from here to right there, and then a line from mid to mid, and a line from mid to mid. And then if I want to, I can be really obnoxious and trim out this part here and this part here and make a horizontal slider. And I just do it just like I did upstairs. And then I put a note just like I did upstairs on my B dim layer. So I got to come up here and find my basement dim layer. There it is right there. And I go DT, enter, click right here. And I go 4, space, 4, return. I put a 0 right there, enter, enter. And I just pick out this guy right here, go down here to my modify tool, make him 3 inches instead of 6. And then I can just come back up to this guy and move this. And I'm going to turn my snap off here in a second. Up here, so it's a 4040 window. Copy this straight over. So I'm trying to visually line it up like that right there off the end of that tab on my 4. This one needs to come back, so I'm going to move this guy from right here. Right there, it's probably fine. Just so it lines up and looks good. Then I'll move both of these from like right here down to this midpoint right there. Okay. Like I said, it's just a builder's dimension. I figure out where all my windows go and I put them in. Now, a couple of things to consider as I do this. One, this is going to have a porch on it right here. And in my plan, in my brain, looking at this floor plan, it makes sense to have a wraparound porch for that side patio we're going to have over here. So I either have a porch here and a patio here, which all of it would mean that it's covered. I will not want any window wells here on the porch or here on the side. Definitely not on the porch. If I do a side that's patio, I can put still bars over it, grate over it, and I'm fine. But as I try to do this, I try to be very careful about those things. Okay. Now, other things I might do that normally show up. If you look at your B, I'm looking at all of my B layers right here, and there's one I don't have made right now, so I'll probably have to make it. Actually, nope, I have one right here. So these are my joists, and I call them joists and beams. I put them on the same layer. I'm going to put in a beam that is a polyline that goes from right here on over to right here, so it just spans across. Now, if you look at it, it is a center line. Now, I'm going to make it a polyline, which I did. I'm going to go polyline, edit, PE, enter. I'm going to pick this guy right here. Now, my polylines, I need to change their widths because, in all honesty, I'm going to have at least 1.5 inches for my joist thickness on this. So I'm going to put one in like that, and then I can use a command called array. Now, here's how we're going to do this. I put one there, and I'm going to go like this. I'm going to go copy, and this is the hard way to do it, so I'm going to show you both ways. So I'm going to copy, CP, enter, highlight this beam right here, pick a spot right here, and point it straight down. Now, I usually go 2 foot on center for my beams. So see, I went down, pointed down until typed in 24. That's 2 feet. The next one's 48. After that, it's 72. Then it's 96. And that gets me to the end right there. Okay. But notice it goes past the end of my house. Trim. Use this as a cutter. Enter. Just pick these guys off. And it trims them back to even. So there's my floor joist there. In all honesty, I'd probably double up this end and I'd have a rim joist all the way around this. But we'll get to that. Okay. Now going the other way, let's do it the easy way. I'm going to use the array command. I'm going to pick this line, same as I did before, and it's going to be a rectangular array. And now here's where it gets fun. I've got how many columns? Well, I only want one column. Now, row-wise, I want if I do the math, that's 30 feet. Actually, it's 32 feet at 2 feet. I'm going to go 16, and I'm going to tell them the distance between them is 24 inches. So it arrays them out, literally makes copies all the way up that. Now, it counts my first one. So I actually need 17 copies to reach the end of the house. Okay. So I put that in. I go, okay. Now, here's the bad part. Did it actually reach the end of the house? Not quite. It's because of the mud seal and things out here. And so I've actually got to make one more copy, but it's not at a normal distance. This from its own end. Oops. See, that's an array. I actually have to explode it. It groups them all. Copy this line from its own endpoint right here. Come on, give me the end. Try this again. Copy this line right here. Enter. Endpoint to endpoint. Okay, I don't know why it liked me that time. But there's my floor joist put in. And I figured out where they go and which way they run. Okay. Other than that, we're good to go. Now I'm going to turn on some layers so you can see how things line up. And this is one of the reasons I like to do it this way. I'm actually going to turn on my walls, my windows for my first floor, and the poche. And honestly, yeah, keep current layer on. Okay, let's go up here and get the rest of these turned on. Dimensions, brick. Okay, should be everybody. But see how I've drawn everything one on top of the other? That's so that I can make sure things line up and there's no problems. Now, the way I've drawn this right now, with that window in the basement, that means that should have a basement. I don't have stairs. I've got to go draw stairs. And I put the stairs on a layer that's shared with both layers. Okay, so in fact, if you look at my layers here, you'll find out down here at the bottom, I have a stairs layer that's all the way down here under stairs. Okay, that's because that way when I do something like this, and I go in here and say, okay, I want all of my first floors, I'm going to tell, let's go down here to B. I'm going to say my B dims is going to be my current layer. And I come up here and I highlight everything from here, and I hold my shift key down to here and tell all those to be off and frozen. When I go like that, that means I don't end up getting my stairs by accident, and my stairs stay locked and on. Okay, that way I can tell where they're at on both floors, and I don't have to worry about drawing a wall on top of one of them or putting my stairs in one spot on one floor and a different spot on the upper floor. So that's it for layers and putting in the foundation. Now I do dimensions the same way I always do. I would actually do this if I'm doing them. I would turn off my beams. And in all honesty, for what I'm doing right now, I'd actually turn off my footings as well. And then I just go in like I did before. under BDIMS, and I go into my dimension right here under anode, linear, and I start putting in my dimensions just like I did on the ground floor. I just pull them out, and then I start with my continue, and I work right away across the building. Now, if I have any openings, I measure the opening. Now, here's the fun part with this. Sometimes you want to do the dimension like such that just measures like where the opening falls, so that you can know brick layers and things like that. I do it to centers of windows because I don't know what manufacturer window each contractor is using. When they see the window and they know the center, they can get their frames to match and stick them right in their foundation. So that's where we're at with it. Thanks for your time, and we will see y'all later.